Systems. We are back with Congressman Michael Waltz and Michael McCaul. Michael McCaul, what do you make of the U.S. and its allies shutting out certain Russian banks from the SWIFT network? How important is that, and what should be done now?
Well, I've said all along that we should have been doing this pre-invasion up post and the lethal aid pre-invasion up post, but here we are. And the fact is, I'm glad they're doing the SWIFT sanctions and sanctioning Putin himself. But the big exemption that's carved out, Maria, is energy. This is Putin's biggest source of income, revenue coming into Russia, 40%. Europe's 40% tied to it. This is why, you know, for the life of me, I don't know why the president waived Nord Stream 2 sanctions that I worked so hard to put on that pipeline. But the fact of the matter is, if you carve out energy, that's his lifeblood, Putin's lifeblood. And it also, the idea that we're importing Russian energy in the United States after our president shut down Keystone, made us not energy independent anymore, but rather now dependent on Russia, and then putting Putin's pipeline into Europe, making Europe dependent on Russian energy is such a huge foreign policy and national security failure that we find ourselves now. I would say unleash the arsenal of sanctions right now. Now's the time. Don't wait any longer.
Well, I mean, Michael Waltz, it's so obvious for anybody to see how bad policy has resulted in terrible, bad outcomes. Your thoughts on why energy is exempted and why, by the way, has the U.S. increased its imports of oil from Russia?
Yeah. Well, it's because Europe is hooked on is absolutely addicted and hooked on Russian oil and gas. And the irony of it all, Biden's Energy Secretary, Jennifer Granholm, admitted to me in a hearing it's some of the dirtiest form of gas in the world. So the environmental argument doesn't even hold up. But since the United States has moved away from Venezuelan oil, rightly, and since Biden then shut down U.S. domestic oil, we've become more dependent, with 7% of our imports now coming from Russia. We've actually doubled the amount of Russian oil and gas that we've imported in the last year. It's just unbelievable. It's unacceptable, and it's got to stop. And I hope Biden announces a reversal at the State of the Union, but I'm not optimistic.
And Maria, why is Putin in
yeah, go ahead.
Why is he in Ukraine to begin with, right? Well, diminish, weaken NATO, legacy, regain the glory of the empire, but it's to control the Black Sea. He wants the ports, Odessa, Mariupol. He wants to control the Black Sea. That is energy, and that's what this whole thing is about.
That's a great point. It absolutely is right, Congressman. And Michael Waltz, I want to switch gears and ask you about why the U.S., in the fog of war, has given the Chinese Communist Party an incredible concession here. The Department of Justice has ended the Trump-era China initiative following what they're calling concerns over bias. We have had a string of indictments of, academics, embassy staff, people who were getting paid by the CCP and sending intellectual property of America, even intellectual property that is used in our military, to the CCP. And now the DOJ shuts this investigation down. Can you explain this?
Yep. It's inexplainable. But look, the Chinese Communist Party is stealing their way to the top militarily. The hypersonic missile that they launched, the new stealth fighters, their new ballistic missile submarines are being built based on American advanced research, nanotechnology, supercomputing, advanced materials, and they're stealing it from our universities and our research institutes. So, for example, I'm on a committee, the Science Committee, that has oversight of the National Science Foundation, passes billions on to our universities and research grants. Do you know how large their security office is, Maria? It's one woman. And they've received 1,000% increase in referrals from the FBI on research theft, stealing this stuff and sending it right over to Beijing. And you have American professors that make all kinds of money on research grants from the Defense Department and NASA, then goes over and moonlights as a second job over in Chinese universities, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. The Trump DOJ started an aggressive campaign called the China Initiative to investigate these professors and these students and this theft, and now the Biden DOJ is shutting it down, and it's inexplicable.
Well, Michael McCaul, you were the head of the China task force. You knew what was going on. Are you doing anything about the fact that the DOJ is going to shut this investigation down? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's not a priority for them, and they cite kind of this woke politics, political correctness argument for shutting it down. You know, I live in Texas. We shut down the Houston consulate for a reason. They were stealing intellectual property from universities, from scientists, from NASA, and that's what it was all geared towards. I was a federal prosecutor. I met with the Attorney General on this very issue. We had a lot of indictments coming down in the previous administration, and now we're seeing it drying up. Why is that? I have to ask that broader question. You know, when you saw President Xi and Putin at the Beijing Olympics in this unholy alliance, this is a fear, and we talked about Iran as well. But this, to ignore the threat from within, the enemy within the United States, which is real, and the espionage is real, and Mike's right, that hypersonic was built on the backbone of American technology. That's got to stop.
Unbelievable. Michael McCaul.